Okay, hopefully I can get this right this time. I have to pull it up on my screen. Okay, Chris Lasher is the Animal Management Supervisor of the Red Wolf Species Survival Plan Coordinator. Chris is an Animal Management Supervisor at the North Carolina Zoo. With 29 years of experience in zoos, his primary responsibilities include general supervision, operations, recourse, and staff management involved in the care of grizzly bears, black bears, bison, elk, and red wolves. Chris is the coordinator of the American Zoos and Aquarium Species Survival Program for red wolves, and the primary responsibility to maintain a robust population of red wolves under human care to be available for recovery back into the historic range. Chris received his Bachelor of Science degree in zoology from the State University of New York at Oswego. After receiving his degree, he worked for 3 years at the Ross Park Zoo in Brigham, New York as a zookeeper and lead zookeeper. Chris moved to North Carolina Zoo in 1995 and has been a member of the team ever since. And I've been talking to Chris online here, and he sounds like an awesome dude, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say. So Chris, take it away.
No pressure there. I appreciate it. Let me share my screen real quick, and hopefully can do this. Let me start presentation. Okay, share screen.
Oh, Chris, I am recording this. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
All right, so when I share screen, everything goes blank on my end. So you guys have to give me a thumbs up if you're seeing what you, it should be a red wolf, American red wolves in the North Carolina Zoo. Everyone seen that? Fantastic.
Yep, we're good.
All right, now. Okay, just a little bit about myself. I'm an animal management supervisor here at the North Carolina Zoo. I was hired in '94, but actually started working January 7th, 1995, when the North American section of the North Carolina Zoo opened. I am currently the Species Survival Plan Coordinator for the American Red Wolf, which is a national program taking care of all wolves under human care. And I'm also the founder of the American Zoos and Aquarium SAFE program for the American Red Wolf, which is saving animals for extinction. A little bit about my background. I started working at the Catskill Game Farm when I was still going to college up in Catskill, New York, in the Catskill Mountains of New York. I say upstate New York, not New York City. I'm not a New York City guy at all. And then when I graduated from college, I worked at Ross Park Zoo in Binghamton, New York, and then got the incredible opportunity to come down to the North Carolina Zoo, which, if you guys haven't been to this amazing facility in your state, is really one of the top zoos in the nation. We are the largest zoo in the world as far as land mass goes. We were the first zoo really built to be a natural habitat zoo, where our animals are living on wide open spaces as opposed to in cages type thing. Our one habitat alone, the African grasslands, is around 40 acres, and about 60% of other zoos in this country would fit inside that one habitat. So if you live in North Carolina and your taxes support the work that we're doing here at the North Carolina Zoo, thank you so much. And you have a gem here for sure. So come on out and visit us. Over my years here, I've been a zookeeper and then a supervisor. I was promoted to be a supervisor about 18 years ago of the Northwoods Prairie Habitat, which is what Jenny mentioned, grizzly bears, black bears, bison, elk, and red wolves. I've also dabbled in supervising at the Cypress Swamp, the Australia area, which is no longer here, and the African Plains area. For 12 years now, I've been on the national program for saving the red wolf under human care, and for the last 5 years, I've been the coordinator of that program. So that president, and like your president, I'm constantly looking for someone to take over for me. So it's a big job. So wanted to get into a little bit about what an American red wolf is, because actually a lot of people have really never heard of the American red wolf. And to get a little bit about why I picked the American red wolf as the species to dedicate my career to, I graduated from State University of New York at Oswego with a degree in zoology, ready to take on the world of zookeeping. And my first job, went to a zoo and I started working with the American red wolf. And during my entire career, or during my entire education, no one even mentioned red wolf. I didn't know what it was. And I graduated with a degree in zoology and I didn't know what a red wolf was, and came to find out that this is the all-American wolf. This is the only wolf species that is native to historic ranges solely within the United States. And this was an animal that no one's talking about. We know, like, when European settlers came over and settled the eastern part of the United States, they did a number on the ecosystem and kind of eradicated the predators in the area. And we knew there was wolves here, but I thought it was a gray wolf, and I think everybody assumes it was the gray wolf, and it was actually the American red wolf that the European settlers eradicated when they came over to this part of the world. There's never been gray wolves on the eastern side of the Mississippi. So that was kind of my introduction and kind of why I started going into this field of working with red wolves to try to get that story out about this amazing, amazing animal. So these guys are native North American canids. They're intermediate size, so they're bigger than a coyote and smaller than a gray wolf. They stand, about 26 to 3 feet tall at the shoulder. They have long pointed ears, long legs. They're very slim and svelte animals. They get their prey by chasing them down. They don't necessarily they run very fast, but they're not going to run faster than a deer, but they can run longer than a deer. So that's how they get their prey. And they are red. They are reddish brown and kind of have that buff color. And you'll see a lot of pictures of the American red wolf in my slides. For some reason, I love the critter. So a lot of people confuse the American red wolf for a coyote. They think that what they're thinking it's just a hybrid is one of the words you hear a lot. And here's an example of an American red wolf versus a coyote, and they are quite different species. But what they can do, and what all wolf species and canid species, canids are dog-like animals, what they can do is breed. We learned in school that a species is an animal that, if they breed with another animal, produce a viable offspring. So that means they're the same species. What we learned in school is wrong. So, most canids, gray wolves, Mexican wolves, red wolves, coyotes, they can interbreed and actually produce viable offspring. Those offspring can breed again and continue to produce puppies. So when people found that red wolves and coyotes, when we wiped out red wolves, Europeans wiped out red wolves, coyotes started taking over that territory and breeding with red wolves and producing viable offspring. So they assumed that all red wolves were hybrids, which is not the case. Here's the historic range for the American red wolf. As you can see, it does get really close to Mexico and kind of, up towards Canada a little bit, but this is an animal that its entire historic range, where it's been found in for its eternity, has been here in what we now call the continental United States. Down here in the bottom in southwestern Louisiana, southeastern Texas, that's where the remnant population of red wolves was located. So back in the 1970s, right when the Endangered Species Act was coming on board, the US government realized that the American red wolf would go extinct without doing something about it. So back then, they went down into what they thought was the last remnant population of the American red wolf, and they captured as many canids, or dog-like animals, again, as they could. And they ended up capturing about 400 to 500 animals in this one little area that looked like red wolves, that looked like canids. But then they started doing morphological testing. We didn't have genetic testing back in the 70s and 80s, but we had what we had called was morphological testing, which is pretty much size. We measured ear length, nose length, tail length, body length. We listened to them howl. We did a lot of those type of things. And we found of those 400 to 500 animals they captured, there was only 14 pure red wolves left alive in the world. And of those 14 red wolves were removed from the wild and put into a captive breeding program, which is what formed what we now call the species survival plan for the American red wolf. Over the course of time, we were able to bring those numbers up some and start a recovery program. And up here in North Carolina, in the eastern part of North Carolina, is where the recovery program started and still exists today. That the only wild population of this American red wolf is now located in Northeast North Carolina, centered in Alligator National Wildlife Reserve. The Alligator River National Wildlife Reserve was actually formed specifically for recovery of the American red wolf. So what makes a red wolf? The behavior of this species. So red wolves are social animals and they do live in packs, but unlike gray wolves, the red wolf pack is more of a family group. So they're made up of one breeding pair only. So only one pair, only two adults, one male adult, one female adult, and then up to 2 years of offspring. Once those offspring, so a male and a female get together and have a litter, and that litter will grow up and be part of that family group. When they only breed once a year. So when the male and female are ready to have another litter the next year, that first litter will actually help raise that second litter. They form a really strong bonded family group. But then when the third year comes along and mom and dad are ready to have another litter, like, okay, this is too many mouths to feed. The old ones, you go start a pack of your own. The ones that are only 1 year old are going to help raise the next litter, and that cycle continues that way. Red wolves do bond for life. That mating pair of red wolves bond for life, and they will not look for another mate unless something happens to their mate. If their mate dies or has some type of injuries, that's the only way that they will look for another mate, is if the one they have is no longer available. So they do bond for life. And they, unlike coyotes, are incredibly shy and elusive. They try to avoid humans at all costs. Coyotes also form family groups, but their pups will leave at 9 months to maybe 1 year old, 1 year. So most of the time you're going to find coyotes in pairs or pairs. So why are they important? They're important because they are the apex predator for the southeastern United States. There is nobody above them in the food chain for the southeastern United States. But why is that important? Why is it important to have an apex predator on the landscape? Well, it's because they control everything underneath them. As you guys know, we have a large population of white-tailed deer in the southeastern United States. It causes a lot of problems for us. We got not just for humans, with the hit by car and the crop detriment, the crops that they're eating. They also really destroy underbrush of the forests because they're overgrazing. There's a lot of impacts to the ecosystem that we have with having so many white-tailed deer, even to the point where if they're grazing grasses down too low, then some of our ground-dwelling birds can't nest safely. Animals like raccoons and possums can come and find their nests a lot easier because the grass is so low from the overgrazing of the white-tailed deer. So not having that apex predator to control the deer population really has an impact on the entire ecosystem of the area. So that's why not having an apex predator in the landscape is really detrimental. But why are they? They're also important because they're aesthetically pleasing. They bring a value to humans for living in that environment. We know that hunters who sometimes are thought to be the ones that don't want red wolves on the landscape because they're competing for those same deer. Most hunters are actually saying they like being in an environment that has a full natural diversity of wildlife. They also know that red wolves are not going to be able to take healthy young studs of white-tailed deer. They're going to go after the older animals. They're going to go after the post-reproductive animals. They're going to go after the ones that are easier to catch. They also don't eat fawns because we think the red wolves realize there's not enough meat on the fawns. There's not enough bang for the buck to try to get a fawn. So the red wolves are going after the older deer, where hunters are usually going after the younger deer with the big racks and the more impressive flanks, I guess you would say. So a little bit about the genetics of the red wolf. Like I said, we know that they're very closely related to coyotes, but they are not a hybrid like coyote. They do share a common ancestor and they can interbreed, but that's the same thing for the gray wolf and the Mexican wolf. They all share a common ancestor and they can interbreed. Currently, the wild population only has a 4% genetic integration from coyotes. And what that means is Northeastern North Carolina was picked to be the recovery location for red wolves because there were no coyotes here. Coyotes are not native to the southeastern United States. They've only moved in because there's no longer any red wolves here. But we picked Northeastern North Carolina for reintroduction because there were no coyotes there. Well, coyotes have moved there. They've gotten there. Some debate whether on their own or they were actually introduced in fox hunting camps type things. But so there is some integration that's going on in the recovery location with coyotes. But what we do know is that if a red wolf can find a red wolf, they're going to breed with a red wolf. They do choose red wolves over coyotes. The only time we get the integration is if those dispersing 2-year-old animals can't find a red wolf and it becomes breeding season, they will breed with a coyote. We also know that red wolves have more novel alleles, or their genetics are more novel than any other canid. So they're actually the most unique canid on the landscape. And we also know that in 2019, the National Academy of Science did a study into whether or not the red wolf was a hybrid or a species. And the National Academy of Science, through their study, declared that the red wolf is a true species and demands protection under the Endangered Species Act. So the current status, we have 243 wolves in 47 partner institutions under human care. Those 47 institutions are the ones that make up the species survival plan. The sad news is there's only about 8 to 15 wild wolves left in the world, and they're right here in North Carolina. And we say 8 to 15, 8 is the number of wolves that are collared. So a lot of the red wolves out there in the landscape are monitored, and they wear bright orange collars to help identify them to hunters and landowners. But it also lets the U.S. Fish and Wildlife officers track these animals and monitor and kind of keep an idea of where they're going and what they're doing. Not all the animals are monitored, so that's why we see some animals on camera traps that don't have collars. So we don't know a total number, but we think it's somewhere around over 8, but probably less than 15. And that's down from at the height of the recovery program, there was about 150 animals on the landscape. So that is way, way down from what it used to be. So the programs that I manage are the SSP and the SAFE. And I just want to talk a little bit about the difference between the two programs. So the SSP is the population of wolves. It's about the wolves. And what we do every year is we create a breeding and transfer plan that identifies the proper, through genetics and stud books, we can identify the best possible breeding pairs to maintain a genetically healthy population under human care. And we work with the 47 different holders to move animals around the country on a yearly basis to create these breeding pairs. We do what the wolves do in the wild. We just help them along. So when we breed and these animals get to be about 2 or almost 3 years old, that's when we move them from their family group and create new breeding pairs for them in other institutions. We disperse them just like they would be dispersed in the wild under natural situation. And our goal really is to maintain that stable population, maintain that population of actual red wolf under human care, so we can support recovery in the future, both now and in the future. The difference between that and the SAFE program is working with what we call stakeholders. So everybody who has skin in the game for trying to save the red wolf, both either on the saving side or maybe on the side that doesn't want red wolves on the landscape. So we work with all stakeholders, the wolf holders, the non-government organizations, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the landowners that are right in the recovery location, the researchers. We try to work with everybody to bring everybody to a common table to talk about the concerns and the problems with recovery. We create a plan for the protection and the recovery of the red wolf, and we provide resources to raise awareness and engagement across the historic range and ultimately across the entire country on why the red wolf is important. A little history about the red wolves at the North Carolina Zoo. So the North American section of North Carolina Zoo opened in 1995, and that's when we first brought red wolves to the North Carolina Zoo. We had 3 female red wolves on our guest view habitat. Through that breeding and transfer plan in the SSP, we were able to remove some of the females and bring in a male. So our first litter was born in 1997. There was 5 puppies. And then in 1997, it's really the call for space, the call for expansion for the American Red Wolf program really started happening then. So we built 5 enclosures that were off guest view that were specifically built for breeding and increasing populations of red wolves. And once those were done, we started having more litters born. So we had litters born, you can see there, from 2002 to 2021, we've had litters born in many years, and we've had 52 total puppies born here at the North Carolina Zoo over that time frame. In 2016, we doubled the size of our red wolf holding area, where we now have 10 enclosures in our off guest view holding area for maintaining red wolves. Last year was the record year for us. We had 3 different litters born here at the North Carolina Zoo with a total of 12 puppies. And we had 100% survival of those puppies, which is really fantastic. And we currently have 35 wolves here at the North Carolina Zoo. To put that in perspective, that's more than double of what the wild population is. So the wolves we have here just on our site here at the North Carolina Zoo that we're working with is more than double what the entire population is, entire wild population is. So a little bit about the resource or what we do here. Again, this is our wolf propagation area. As you can see, it is way away from guests. It's just fenced in the woods. We have almost 3,000 acres available to us here at the North Carolina Zoo, with only about 600 of those that the guests can see. So we have plenty of space to do this type of conservation work right here on our site, which is fantastic. And what do they look like from the ground? They are not fancy. they are pretty much the basic. We're doing what we can to breed wolves. If you guys look, you can see one wolf sitting here, one little brave sucker sitting here looking at me. Why are you taking a picture of me? type thing. So these are what our wolf enclosures look like. It is an 8-foot fence with a 3-foot cantilever. Red wolves are incredibly athletic, and if we did not have that 3-foot cantilever, these wolves would go over an 8-foot fence like it wasn't even there. There's also a 3-foot wide concrete barrier on the inside of the habitat. That is, the fence is concreted to that barrier, and that's a dig protection to make sure these guys aren't digging out. They're very athletic and very capable animals. But what you really want to see, at least what most people want to see, is the puppies. So that's why we do the conservation work we do here, is to increase the population and make sure we're sustaining a population of animals under human care. So the puppies are about, these wolves are interesting in that they breed once a year. They're not like our domestic dogs that will cycle every 30 days and can have multiple litters over the course of a year. Red wolves, female red wolves only cycle one time a year, and that is usually the end of January, beginning of February. And that cycle is actually brought on by the male red wolf, who starts producing semen in end of December, beginning of January. And when that male red wolf starts producing semen and his testosterone levels go up, it actually triggers the female red wolf to cycle. And then they have that one breeding situation. If they miss it, they're done. They got to wait until next year, but they have that one breeding situation. And then usually what a litter of red wolves will be born about 64 days after the breeding situation. It's a really short gestation period, and they're born, as you can see here in the upper left-hand corner. These wolves are about 2 weeks old up here in the upper left-hand corner. So they're born very, very small, very helpless. They can't see anything. They can't hear anything. They can't really move around that much. Pretty much they're able to get to mom to nurse, and that's it. But they grow up really, really quick, as you can see in these pictures we have here. By the time they're 6 months old, they're almost adult size. So they go from born incredibly helpless to 6 months being an almost adult size. And I don't know if the sound's gonna play here, but I do have a little video of us doing some pup checks. And this pup is only about a couple months old. But if you look, you can see mom and dad running around the back wondering what we're doing. But if you look inside the den box, there's a little puppy in there. And he's really brave. He was barking at the zookeeper who was taking this video. And he's like, I don't know if I want to be out here or not. Can you guys hear the barking or no? No, I didn't think so. Sorry. And here's another short video of puppies venturing out of their den box for maybe one of the first or second times. And there's that's dad coming over to kind of check what they do. Mom and dad are both very responsible for taking care of the puppies. Mom will stay with the puppies for the first 2 weeks of life and pretty much not leave them while she's nursing them. So it's dad's responsibility to bring mom food and make sure mom stays healthy while she's nursing the puppies. I don't know if you can see there in the background, that's mom walking around. And if you notice, she might have a limp. Mom in this case is actually three-legged. She had an injury before coming to us at North Carolina Zoo that caused her leg to be amputated. And she's been one of the best moms we've ever had, even though she's only three-legged. She does not like us though, which is fine. And we do wolf checks, we do pup checks, and these pup checks are done starting at 48 hours old. We do our first check to make sure that the animal, these guys had a bottleneck in their genetics. They only had remember, they had 14 founding animals, so all red wolves alive today are descendants of those 14 animals. And because of that genetic bottleneck, there are some genetic dispositions that these guys can be susceptible to. Those include a cleft palate or heart issues. We do checks right at 48 hours old to make sure that none of those are existing within the population we have right here. So these guys maintain a good welfare. But as they get bigger, as you can see over here, we have to, even at this size, we have to protect ourselves from the red wolf when we're getting hands on them, because those little teeth are very, very sharp. So these are just some of the pup checks that we're doing. And we do have a small video. This one's a little bit longer. I'm gonna advance it a little bit. You can see a keeper keeping an eye on mom and dad while two others are going into the den box to check on the wolves. And these guys, this is a first pup check. So these guys are 48 hours old. And I want you to look at the keeper's face when she picks up this puppy. And tell me that she's not enjoying her job. And then there's a vet just going to do a quick check on them. So one of the things I'm most proud of as being part of this program is the fostering program. So red wolves, they'll breed in the wild and they disperse and they try to find other red wolves. But when there's such few numbers, that the genetic makeup of those animals tends to not branch too much. So we try to figure out a way to get different genetics into the wild population. And we started that by releasing adult wolves into the wild. Well, we found that releasing adult wolves into the wild had a mortality rate of about 50 to 70%. They just did not do well transferring from under human care into the wild. But what we did find that bond that that family group that these guys have, that bond is so strong that if we introduce puppies at 2 weeks old to a mom that already had puppies, she would accept them. So this is me in 2002, about 60 pounds ago, with a fish and wildlife officer going out into the wild. You can see he has some tracking devices where we're tracking mom back to the den. And then we found the den site, and I have in here 2 puppies that were born at the North Carolina Zoo. When we put them in the den site, that's the 2 puppies I had, and that's one of the puppies that mom had. And we put those 2 puppies in there and we left. And it was one of the hardest things I did, but also one of the most gratifying things I did, to actually put animals back into the wild. And you're probably sitting there wondering, what kind of den site is that? So the premise for this first ever pup fostering was because mom was a known mother. She's done a good job of raising litters in the past, but she had a flood. And in her flood, she lost 4 of the 6 puppies that she had born. So she only had 2 left. We knew mom could handle more than 2 puppies. So the Fish and Wildlife officers reached out to me and said, what can we do? And I said, you know what? I have puppies here. I can bring them to you. So it was really just hey, let's try this. We can do this. Let's try this. And what this morphed into, because mom accepted those puppies grew up, helped raise the next year's litter, dispersed, and had litters of their own, 1 male, 1 female. So it was really a great success story. But what this morphed into was a new tool in our toolbox for getting genetics into the wild. And we've done this now. We stopped doing it for a few years because of political reasons, but we did this every year from 2002 up until last year, with just about a 10-year gap in there for political reasons. But every single time we've done this, mom has accepted the puppies. We've had 0 fatalities of puppies when we're doing the pup fostering. It's just incredible to think that. And because it's been so successful for us, now the Mexican Wolf program, which is also a recovery program, is doing the same thing. And they've had the same level of success doing the pup fostering. So I'm very proud to say that I was the first ever to do a captive born pup to a wild foster situation. And now that technique is being used to help 2 species stave off extinction. Under human care, we have to get our hands on these animals a few times, but with red wolves, it's actually fairly easy. So we have a couple different types of red wolves. We have red wolves that we call freezers. So we get them, they get into a den box or they go into a corner and they just freeze. And they're like, oh my God, what are you gonna do? And they'll let us do it. We have red wolves that are a little bit of a fighter. So we have to, get some padded equipment and get some, if we can get them in a small space, it's better. We get padded equipment to safely get us closer to the animal and give them something to bite, not us. And then we have runners. And these are the guys that run and try to get away from us. And we have to use a technique with a net to get hands on them. That's not fun. I've been taken off my feet many times by trying to get a wolf into a net. And then some of the other things we deal with under human care, the biggest issue we have is storms. Storms taking down trees and taking down fences. And this is an interesting situation. In 2015, we had actually, I think that the date stamp is wrong because that wasn't 2015. But we had a tree come down, and this, you can see that it took out the entire fence. The fence was no more than 2 feet off the ground when that tree came down. The red wolves never left. They went into their den box and they're like, that is scary, and I am not coming out. So it was a scare for us for sure. We thought we were going to lose some wolves, but the wolves stayed in the pen. We're able to get hands on them and transfer them to another pen. But this is the biggest thing that we have to worry about with wolves under human care is losing containment of our fences. But the other thing that wolves do a lot is catching their own dinner. Even here under human care, we feed the wolves a dry kibble that is very nutritious for them, but it also attracts all kinds of other critters like the raccoons, possums, field rats, and squirrels. A lot of times when these animals enter the habitat, they don't leave the habitat. We see, I got some really good pictures of a male red wolf carrying around a whole raccoon in his mouth, and he was trying to do his best to try to hide it from me and let me know that he did not have that raccoon. So even under human care, these guys are very efficient and very effective hunters, and they don't need to be taught anything on how to do that. All right, so where do we go from here? The next step for the North Carolina Zoo is to increase our capacity. I think I talked to you a little bit earlier about the capacity issue for the Red Wolf SSP. Right now we have 243 animals under human care, and we are at 105% capacity. All of our spaces are filled up. So the only way to increase the population under human care is to increase our capacity. We have to build more enclosures. So the North Carolina Zoo is committed to building 20 pens that are going to range from a half an acre to 3 acres. To put that in perspective, the 10 enclosures we currently have are only about 5,000 square feet each. So we're trying to build larger enclosures that allow the animals to have more space to get away from us and to exhibit natural behaviors. We're also going to have what we're calling a field office, which will have program space and quarantine space. There's going to be guest experiences planned, and it'll give us the ability to have 60 wolves, not counting puppies. So that'd be 30 different breeding pairs of wolves we could have here at the North Carolina Zoo. We do know that we did receive a grant from U.S. Fish and Wildlife in 2021 for $50,000 to kind of help us start construction. We've matched that with $50,000 of fundraising on our own, but the total cost of the planned facility will be about $3 to $5 million. And why are we doing it here at the North Carolina Zoo? One, because we have the expertise. I've been here for the North Carolina Zoo for 27 years, and I've shared my information and my expertise with a large number of keepers and other people here. We have the expertise to take care of these animals. We also have a large amount of unused land, which a lot of facilities that house animals under human care don't. We are very close to the current recovery area, so for that pup fostering or for releasing adults, it's very easy to transfer animals into the wild. And we are within the historic range, so for educational purposes, educating people about the American red wolf in the historic range is very important. this is probably where I'm supposed to say to you, hey, give me money. But, if you would like to donate to the building the American Red Wolf Conservation Center, just reach, if you can go on the North Carolina Zoo Society page. So it's nczsoociety.com, I think. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. They have a running campaign for raising money for the American Red Wolf. So I encourage everyone to do that, but I'm not going to say more than just that. And this is kind of what we're looking at building, so that the other component of the current component of our expansion or our holding is right here, and this is the concept for what we like our new expansion to look like, our new holding facilities to look like, with a nice field office, a nice office for the keepers, and quarantine space, and veterinary space for the wolves. So the recovery efforts that are going on right now, there is, again, one population of red wolves in the wild in northeastern North Carolina. In 2020, we identified 4 adult wolves from the SSP, 2 pairs to be released into the wild, and we fostered 4 puppies. And we talk about a little bit about fostering and talk a little bit about releasing adults. I can say that the 4 adult wolves that we put from under human care into the wild in 2020 have all passed away. 3 of them were hit by a car, and 1 of them was shot by a landowner. The 4 puppies that we fostered have all survived. We've seen them on camera traps. We know they're all doing well. The thing we need to do now, we learned from those 4 adult releases about what we can do different next time. So in 2021, just the other day, this is information I wouldn't have had if we spoke last time. I just got a request from U.S. Fish and Wildlife for 12 adults. So 2 more pairs. This time we're going to be bonded pairs that have been together for at least a year. So hopefully they'll stay together and be more successful. And then 1 family group, which is a proven adult breeding pair that had 2 puppies in 2020 and a puppy in 2021. We're going to release that entire family group onto the wild. We're hoping that the puppies give mom and dad more reason to stay in a smaller area and not venture as much. And we're seeing if they do that, maybe they will have less opportunity to be hit by car. So that's kind of what we're thinking when we're releasing the family groups. And we are very prepared to foster again in 2022. We can only foster if there's wild litters. Obviously, you can't put puppies into you can't give puppies to a female that's not lactating. So we can only foster if there's wild litters. We in our breeding and transfer plan for 2021, we put together 38 different pairs of red wolves that we're hoping will breed, and we can take some of those puppies and put them back into the wild. The other things that's going on for the recovery effort is we do have a team of experts that are currently looking on producing an updated recovery plan. The recovery plan for the American red wolf is 20 years old right now and has not been updated in quite a long time. So there's a team of experts working to put that. There is a goal to identify additional recovery areas. So trying to do recovery outside of just Northeast North Carolina, looking at the historic range to see if there's other spaces we can put red wolves. We're going to continue to support the North Carolina recovery effort. And we want to create a better understanding of the Galveston Island wolves. And I'm not going to get into this too much, but there are animals on Galveston Island. That's its top picture here. Galveston Island out in Texas, which is close to that last remnant population of red wolves that kind of look like red wolves. And this is a red wolf, and the top picture is the Galveston Island wolves, and the bottom picture is a typical red wolf. And we want to do some genetic studies on those Galveston Island wolves to see if we can actually, how red wolf are they, and can we increase our founding population from that 14 to a bigger number using those Galveston Island wolves to help create a more genetically sound wolf under human care and for recovery. So that was a lot of information. I talked for 37 minutes according to my counter. But I am very happy. Please let me take some questions. And I'm going to stop my share.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris. You definitely delivered on the cuteness of the and arranged marriages. 1 cycle a year. I don't know, man. Sounds good, right? Hold on. Do we have any questions in the room or on Zoom? Jenny.
Chris, as far as the wolves who have issues when they're born, what happens to them?
It depends on the extent of the issue. If it's something that we can fix, we'll definitely do that. If it's very minor, a lot of times the wolves will overcome it themselves. The big thing we're looking for is issues with the heart, and if one of the puppies has like open valves or holes in their heart or something like that, we'll cull them from the population right then, because it's just the humane thing to do. They'll die. They would die on their own within a couple weeks anyway after suffering. So if we find those issues at 48 hours, we'll remove that animal from the population, so that one, it takes resources away from mom. Mom doesn't have to worry about raising that puppy for the next couple of weeks. And two, it's very humane to do that for that animal versus having it suffer for the next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
All right.
Is it possible that I saw one in Scottsdale, Arizona, because it looked very much like the ones I'm seeing today? Do you think the red wolves are there?
No. that is absolutely impossible. Scottsdale, Arizona is well outside the historic range of red wolves. So what you would see out there in Scottsdale, Arizona, that would be within the Mexican wolf population historical range, but more than likely what you saw was a coyote, and at that, a western coyote. So western coyotes are what would be the original coyote species before humans really took over the continent of North America. There was gray wolves out far west, there was coyotes that was kind of down the middle, and there was red wolves on the east. And the western coyote, which is that original coyote, stayed fairly small because they didn't want to compete with gray wolves. They wanted to be able to hide from gray wolves. They wanted to be able to hide from red wolves. They wanted to eat different prey than both gray wolves and red wolves. So they stayed fairly small. What we're seeing now in the east is what we're calling an eastern coyote, which is a much bigger animal than the western coyote. We think they're getting bigger for a couple reasons. They might have, as they moved east, bred with remnant populations of the red wolf, but they're also, through evolution, there might be increasing in size to be able to take down that larger prey, like the white-tailed deer. Unfortunately, what we're seeing with the eastern coyote is they go after the fawns. They don't give the deer a chance to grow up and reproduce. They're taking the fawns. So having the proper apex predator here in the East Coast is much more important than letting the coyote kind of evolve into that situation, because they're not as functionally proper for this ecosystem.
Do you guys, Emily has a question too, but do you guys I know you're raising funds right now, but do you do like adopt a wolf? Like,
Yeah, there's whenever we have puppies, we always do an adopt a puppy, and if you go on the North Carolina Zoo Society website, they have all kinds of adoption programs there.
Cool, thank you.
So I was going to actually share, if you go out towards the Outer Banks, Fish and Wildlife and everybody actually does an amazing program for the red wolves in alligator. My family's done it several times, and it is so cool. And especially if you can do it right at dusk, you can even hear them, and you can hear them being able to like call to each other and things. So that's really, really fun. Did they, we haven't done it for a couple of years, but did they figure out why this serious decrease in population? They're worried about cars. That's kind of what our guy said, is he's like, this is your reason to drive slowly. Do not go 75 miles an hour on this road. Not only will the cops get you, but you hurt the wolves. So I was just curious if there was something else, or if it was more people.
So and I can say more than the Fish and Wildlife guy could say that you were talking to. So we'll get into it. I'm not as bound to being politically correct as he was, even though I do work for the state. There's some things I can't say because I do work for the state. But when we had 150 animals on the landscape within northeastern North Carolina, there was a few people that really did not want wolves to be there. So they kind of started a smear campaign against the red wolf, and we're fabricating stories about what the red wolf was doing on the landscape. And I say fabricating very confidently, because there was no proof that any of the stories about taking livestock or taking pets out of the backyard, there was absolutely zero proof that was happening. But what that did was it encouraged a very small number of people. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Through studies, we know that about 70% of landowners within the recovery location support red wolves at the recovery location. We also know that about 98% of people within the United States support red wolf recovery. So there's a smaller percentage of people that support red wolf recovery that actually have to deal with the wolves on the landscape, but it's still a high percentage of people who support red wolf recovery. Unfortunately, it takes only a small number of people to really take care of a population that's that small. 150 animals is really a small population. Of those 150 animals, most of them were killed by gunshot. Were people actively going out and hunting animals And they learn very quickly that if they shoot the wolf and they remove the collar and then put the collar someplace else, that when the Fish and Wildlife get the death signal from the collar, they're going to find the collar and not the wolf. So there's no evidence that the wolf was shot. That's how most of those animals died.
Wow. People. Gotta love 'em.
Question.
All right. Yes, go ahead, Bob.
How come the coyotes don't seem to be having the same problem of being extinct as do the red wolves?
Because they're jerks.
Coyotes are fascinating to me. They are really cool animals. And Bob, really to answer your question, it's because they're more adaptive. Coyotes they're an animal that adapts to their environment very easily, where the red wolves is not as adaptive. They became the apex predator, so the rest of the ecosystem had to adapt to them. Coyotes were never an apex predator. They had what we call a mesopredator or a mid-level predator. So they evolved to be a much more adaptive, and that's what red wolves have, or coyotes have kind of why they've been so successful. They adapt to get food from people, their garbages and that kind of stuff. They've adapted to hunting different types of prey. They're not just set on going after white-tailed deer or some other prey. They don't mind going to someone's backyard and taking their chickens. They don't mind going to someone's backyard and taking their small dogs. They're very adapted to those type of things. And let me tell you another really cool story about coyotes. You guys might not find it cool if you don't like coyotes. Coyotes have somehow, and I have no idea how this works, but they're a pressure breeder. So if you put pressure on the population of coyotes in your area, say for instance, you have a pack of, or you have a breeding pair of coyotes and some offspring. If you kill mom or dad, then the breeding offspring will actually mature quicker, or the smaller offspring will actually mature quicker and produce more puppies the following year than if you left mom or dad on the landscape. So there's a pressure gradient, that the more pressure we put on coyotes, the more we hunt them, the more we kill them, the numbers actually increase. With red wolves, that's not the case. The puppies or the offspring of red wolves mature at the same rate, regardless of how much pressure is put on their population.
I have another coyote question.
Sure.
You said they will go into backyards and kill pets. And you also said that the red wolves can jump high. How high can the coyotes jump to get into the yard? We have a fence that's about waist high. Can they jump over that to get to our animals?
Yeah, so what coyotes will do is they'll dig. They'll go underneath the fence. So
Oh,
it really
okay.
doesn't matter how high your fence is. If you don't have a dig barrier, the coyote would get in your backyard in about 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
It doesn't matter how tall your barrier is. It takes them about 5 minutes to dig underneath one. They only need a couple inches.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
We catch them on our wildlife cams on our property all the time. So and we can hear them killing deer. It's really, really an awful sound. But Chris, if you don't mind, we got to wrap up, but if you maybe have a couple extra minutes, if anyone's got questions after we do our 5-way test, maybe Chris can hang on for just a second. You guys could ask. Please pass your blue bins up after putting money in them. And if we could all stand and do the 5-way test. Chris, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your information. It was fascinating. And Jean, thank you for being here. And Sophia, thank you for being here. Oh, tickets. Yes. Pete, hi, honey. Can you pull the winning ticket and read the last 4? $9108. Who's the big wiener? Of course, David Hodgkins. All right. Of all the things we think, say, or do, 1, 2, will it build goodwill and better friendship? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And will it be fun? Ding, 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 ding. Thank you guys. Have a happy Friday. Chris, if you, does anyone else have any questions for Chris before we let him go and pet puppies?
Thank you, Chris. That was awesome. I want to come pet some puppies.
All right,
Sorry.
I know.
Thank you for your time.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. See you all. Have a great Thanksgiving.
After Thanksgiving, everybody.